Opinions go viral. Isn't opinion news an oxymoron? In the past 5 years, New York Times doubled its opinion staff. TV talking heads get ratings, opinions get clicks, and most readers aren't paying too much attention to whether the article they're sharing is from the opinion section or the news section before they tell you their opinion about the publication. But the difference between an established publication and an influencer turned 5G expert is that it has to be fact-based. They're hiring writers, editors, fact-checkers, etc. because if they get it false, they get sued. But whether it's true or not, opinions go viral. Stay tuned. I know you've been maybe one of the people who've studied this more than anyone. What's your sort of opinion on this explosion of opinion journalism in national news?
It does seem like national news sees the value in opinion, as you note with the New York Times growing their staff on their op-ed page. Opinion writers do a very good job of narrative writing, of drawing people in with a story, human interest style stuff. That's probably, it's a well-written argument. It's colorful. It's interesting in ways that reported news can't always match. And so when people are looking to the opinion page, they're not just looking for people's opinions. That's often the most engaging stuff that the newspaper's producing. And
it sort of is an interesting thing. The whole concept of objective journalism is sort of a new concept. In places like England and in Europe, they often always had more opinion sections. It was always more opinionated. Is that something that we're just dealing with, or is there still this? Do you think that news should be completely divided from opinion? What are your thoughts on that?
It's a good question, right? And like so many things in news, it comes down to whether or not they want to, stay in business. I think opinion has a real place in the newspaper because people find it engaging, but also because, at least in the local context, as we'll get into, it's often one of the least professional parts of the newspaper. Like, these are opinion writers, but they're not necessarily journalists. People can write in as guest columns. People from the community and national experts on things can write in and say, here's what I know, and here's why you should understand it in my own words, right? So it kind of cuts out the middleman for readers in a way that is designed to be engaging and interesting while also edited, fact-checked, and put through the journalistic process of making sure that it's been checked rigorously. So in terms of whether it's partisan or whether it's opinion or what the business model is, I think that's got to be part of it to just draw eyeballs in. I think they understand that in Europe. And I think we may be getting back to something more like that here.
So it's kind of the marketplace of ideas. The more opinions, at least if they're fact-based, the better?
I think so. And I think that that's the genesis of it, right? When the New York Times started its own op-ed page in the 70s, op-ed actually means opposite of editorial. It doesn't mean opinion editorial, right? So they specifically drew people in on the page opposite what the editorial board was writing to say, here's some other opinions. Here's some different ones. Here's the rebuttal to what we just wrote. Here's an issue you might not have thought about because we don't cover it. It was deliberately designed to be that way in the New York Times, and it sort of spread across the media landscape after that. But that's often where you'll find opposing perspectives.
So it's supposed to be for opposing perspectives. Now it's like people just screenshot the headline and they say, look what the New York Times just wrote.
Right.
Like you see that all the time. And it really was just an opinion writer, not from the New York Times, not a journalist for the New York Times.
It's so ironic because the editorial page is what the New York Times just wrote, right? And the op-ed is supposed to be the opposite of that, but then the New York Times or whoever is publishing it is being held accountable for what their opinion writers do, which is, rigorous and journalistic fact check, but often maybe tend to be a little provocational, right? Maybe they want to get people talking about something that they don't feel like is being covered in reported news sections of the paper.
How can people be more aware of whether it's opinion or whether it isn't? Or is that just like, we got to just forget about that?
That is a very current problem facing the news industry. There's a lot of people working on how to label opinion content online, right? Like, there's no opinion section as much when you're just reading links separated from the bundle of a paper, right? You just open a newspaper and it says opinion at the top of the page. You're pretty sure that's opinion. You click a link on the internet, you don't know. Maybe it says opinion at the top, but a lot of people, I didn't know what OpEd stood for before I wrote this book, right? Like a lot of people don't know what the ins and outs of what makes opinion journalism rigorous and fact-checked and all that means. And then they say, well, if I'm just getting opinions, why am I reading this newspaper? I can get opinions anywhere. So if they can label it better, I think that's really important. And there's, like I said, a lot of people working on how to do that. And I think it's an important thing for them to do, because if people misunderstand it and don't recognize it, it's going to hurt the credibility of the news source just generally.